Through his sleep, Rin heard someone's reproach, which sounded like a question. How can he be such a weakling? Opening his eyes, the guy heard that they were asking him to simply sign and terminate the contract. He asked in surprise what was going on, since there had been no sign of trouble before. It was Derek, the artistic director of the media company, talking about how he could help Rin become decent if he wasn't. The guy was at a loss, trying to understand what exactly they wanted from him. The director added that the company initially decided to give him a chance because of Yumi's good reputation. But now, he considers it a fatal mistake. The young man asked in surprise what the girl had to do with this. Derek said they had nothing more to talk about, and said he would have to get ready to record Jack's track for the talent show that evening. He also added that Rin won't be able to ruin Jack's career even if he tries. As he left, he also warned the boy to stay away from Yumi. As for the guy himself, the director said that he saw no point in recording his track and advised him to leave before he was kicked out. Rin was confused. His thoughts were about the fact that a new name had appeared again, and it seemed like there was no end to it. He felt despair at having to endure all this again because Opening his eyes, the guy wearily wondered who he was anyway. As you may have guessed, this is Rin. He considers himself a failed singer. The man in question is named Derek. He is the artistic director of a popular local media outlet. The girl Derek mentioned is named Yumi. She is Rin's ex-girlfriend. And Jack is the new guy the company wants to promote. He has completely replaced Rin in both love and career. At the beginning of his career, the boy worked hard, performing in bars to save money for Yumi's admission to a music academy. In the end, he was abandoned, or one might even say banished, and the guy was left with nothing. After sitting and thinking for a while, Rin decided that he couldn't stay here any longer and had to find another place. He decided that in his new life, he had to play by new rules, which meant he couldn't return to the music industry. As the boy was leaving the office, he saw Jack and Yumi walking together, which surprised him greatly. He wondered to himself if this was really the girl. But then he decided he just needed to forget. It was over. Jack was glad that Rin had finally left and wondered how he had gotten into the company in the first place. Yumi replied that she herself did not understand how it had happened. As he was leaving, the guy also heard the new guy tell the girl not to pay attention to it and to be ready to go on stage today. When he went outside, the young man saw a woman with a suitcase who was staring at him. It was Mattis, Yumi's agent. She had a proposition for the guy. He clarified what exactly she wanted and began to wait for an answer with interest. The agent said that there was 100,000 in the suitcase, and she hoped that from now on, he would forget everything that happened between him and Yumi. Rin said with a smile on his face that it was a good amount, and thought to himself that he didn't remember much anyway. She was surprised by his reaction, and asked if he really agreed. The guy changed his expression to a calmer one, and asked Mattis if this was the answer she expected. She replied that it was exactly like that, and began talking about a competition for young talents. The boy interrupted her and said that he was going to take part in it, and there was no question of refusing. The girl noticed that the company had not prepared a song for him and asked what he was going to perform. She added that he was too stubborn. Rin, leaving, only said that they should not worry about him. He himself would figure out what to do. The day of the competition arrived. The guy didn't have a song, but he knew he couldn't miss the chance to go on stage. He knew he had to do this to say goodbye to his past life. A song began to form in his head. He remembered the agent's words about stubbornness. The young man began to write the text, thinking that he was really stubborn. Finally, he found himself on stage. His fingers began to play the guitar, and he began to sing a song he had just made up. The jury discussed among themselves. They admitted that they had never heard anything like it before, and wondered whether he had written the song himself. The audience in the hall was pleasantly surprised and said that the song was really good and interesting. Yumi just looked at Rin, wondering how he managed to come up with that. Derek was irritated, and Mattis tried to calm him down, saying that it didn't make sense, and that only the first lines were good and the rest of the text was nonsense. The guy was completely absorbed in the performance, not noticing anyone around him, and continued singing. One of the jury members noted that the text was well written and had a lively energy. Rin ended his song by saying that he determines his own place in life, and then the guy smashes his guitar on the stage with one swing, leaving only splinters. The audience was shocked by what was happening, because this was not something you often see at a young talent competition. But he confidently took the microphone in both hands and continued singing. In the lyrics of the song, he said that he was the one who was stubborn, and today he has become crazy. After these words, the guy pushed off the stage with his feet, and his body began to fall down. He jumped into the crowd of spectators, continuing to sing about his stubbornness. The audience happily accepted his gesture, catching a new star. Returning to the stage, he ended his performance with a deep bow to loud shouts of his name. When it was time for the jury to speak, they noted that they had not heard such a good song for a long time, which would undoubtedly become popular. 3 yes lit up the board, but the audience only demanded a repeat. Jack watched the broadcast and was both angry and excited. He wondered who wrote the song, assuming it might have been the producer. The jury also asked Rin whether he was an independent singer, or did he have a contract. He said that until today he was an artist of the company Star Media. But before going on stage, the contract with him was terminated. That's why he now performs as an independent artist. One of the judges was surprised how the company could refuse such a singer. In response, the guy simply thanked them for their attention and appreciation of his song. Another jury member mentioned that Star Media was preparing a new artist and asked him if this could be the reason for the termination of the contract. Questions began to circulate in the audience about who this new singer was and why the company sacrificed Rin. The young man calmly replied that he had already sung the song he wanted to sing, and it was time to clear the stage for the next performer. He wished everyone to enjoy the next numbers. The next singer to be announced was Jack from Star Media. In the hallway, Yumi and Mattis discussed the performance. The agent assumed that Jack would not be able to handle it and suggested that the singer suspend cooperation with him. The girl replied that she might have to stop working for a long time. Seeing Rin leaving the stage, Yumi thought that he wasn't trying to destroy the newbie, but his presence alone could do that. Star Media CEO Bill was watching the speech in his office. He was furious. After Rin's performance, he called Derek to find out why they had terminated the contract, and was outraged at what kind of person he had to be to do such a thing. The artistic director knew he had made a mistake. All that came out of his phone were shouts and orders to bring this guy back immediately, or else it would be bad for everyone. Bill demanded to do it right away, calling Derek a stupid pig. He only responded excitedly that he understood. Meanwhile, the newcomer Jack began performing on stage, and everyone was waiting with impatience. But soon the audience was unhappy. The audience shouted for him to leave the stage and considered Rin's replacement a huge mistake. Yumi, seeing what was happening, immediately asked Mattis to call the director and delete all her joint photos with this singer as soon as possible. The agent, watching the performance, realized that the guy had no chance and that he was really performing poorly. Rin, going outside, sighed tiredly. He didn't know if he was happy, but he knew that he was free now. Suddenly he heard his name behind him and an excited Derek was running after him. The guy asked what happened this time, since they had already discussed everything. The director said that he had spoken to the company and they were ready to offer a new contract, assuring that it was not his initiative, but he had convinced them to reconsider their decision. The young man noted that he did not remember most of Derek's words that morning, but he remembered his barbed remarks very well. He began to justify himself, saying that it was a misunderstanding, and assured that he would help the guy become very popular. He offered a contract with a guaranteed salary of $5,000 a month and the title of third-level singer. Rin chuckled and said that it was too easy to refuse such an amount, and wondered to himself why the offer was so modest. The director, smiling, insisted that they were ready to discuss a higher price and would find a compromise. The guy, in turn, confidently stated that there was nothing more to discuss. Derek got angry because he already felt humiliated in front of this young man, and, unable to contain himself, shouted out that the contract was needed by everyone, and this was the best solution. Rin replied that it was not appropriate to use a commanding tone in such conversations, and advised him to return to where he came from, and he added that he should go home and go to bed after such a day. He got into a taxi and drove away. The man was left at a loss, not knowing what to say to the CEO. In the middle of the night, Rin woke up at home from a strange sound. Someone was knocking on the door. He was unhappy because he wanted to sleep and did not understand who could come at night. Getting up and opening the door, he was surprised by what he saw, especially in the middle of the night. There was a woman standing in front of him, and Rin wondered for a second who she was. It was Frances, his landlady, who immediately told the boy not to pretend he had lost his memory. He, a little worried, replied that she was so charming that he simply did not recognize her. The girl coldly remarked that despite this, she would still charge him for the accommodation. She came into the room and began to complain that he owed him 3 months' debt, and reminded him how she came here every day to find him. Sitting down on the sofa, she looked at the guy and asked why he was silent. He apologized, asked to wait a bit, and started looking for something in his bag. The surprised girl said that he had been suggesting to wait for 3 months already, and noted that if it had been dirty here, she would have kicked him out long ago. The boy apologized again and handed her the money, saying that it was the full amount for 3 months. Frances was stunned and immediately began asking where he got all that money from, and if he was planning to move out. The guy smiled and replied that he was unemployed, but a free man, and this was just compensation. She was surprised, noting that being left without a job and a girlfriend at such a young age is a real disaster. Having collected the payment, the landlord decided that it was time to leave, since it was late. Already on the way out, she added that if Rin had problems with work, he could contact her. The guy took a deep breath and thought about what he should do next. Suddenly, Francis turned around and asked him to come to her. The guy was a little surprised and asked what happened as he walked towards the girl. She handed him a bag of food, saying that she didn't eat it herself and that he could take it. Looking inside, he smiled and thanked the hostess for such a gesture. The young man prepared food and sat down to have a snack, when suddenly the phone rang. Picking up the phone, the guy wearily asked what everyone wanted from him. It was Mattis. She said she was standing outside his house and asking him to come down. Rin refused, saying he was busy, and suggested they talk on the phone. The agent stressed that the conversation was important, and expressed hope that they could get along. She stated that she was willing to let him date Yumi because she knew he cared about her and his song proved his potential. The girl also offered to help him develop, submit documents to the company, and unite him with his ex. In response to her words, there was complete silence, which caused her displeasure. The agent irritably asked the guy if he could hear her, and if so, why was he silent? Rin replied that he heard, but he had already spent all his money, and considering that they had nothing else in common, he didn't know what to tell her. Mattis angrily asked him to stop acting like a child and to say directly what he thought. The guy calmly said that everything is very simple. If a person is useless, he will not waste his time on him. She was furious and called him strange and impossible. The boy noted that he was doing everything for his own good, and people with a narrow outlook will always find something to criticize. After that, he said goodbye and ended the call. At this time, Yumi was sitting in the car next to her. The agent turned to her, saying that Rin needed to be persuaded, and suggested that she try to talk to him again. The singer sat silently, pondering the situation and thinking about what to answer. Finally, she asked me to forget about it and told me to go back. Rin woke up after lunch, feeling well rested. He sat down at the computer and began to look through the current news of his city. At that moment, he received a call from an unknown number, to which he responded calmly. The guy answered and asked who was calling him and what exactly they wanted from him. There was a pleasant female voice on the other end of the line. She asked if she had reached Mr. Rin correctly. Then she added that she hoped he was not busy and could talk to her now. In turn, the boy apologized and stated that he did not want to be a star. The girl replied that she was not going to force him to do anything, but wanted to discuss cooperation, offering many options. She mentioned his song Stubborn, noting that it was really good. The guy agreed to talk and asked to send the meeting place via SMS. By evening, he received a message and went to the long-awaited meeting. On the way out, he met the owner, who was well-dressed, and stopped him. The girl asked with interest where he was going, since it was already late. He replied that he would meet a friend, discuss work, and perhaps earn a little money. Francis noted with irony that he had turned down a major contract with the company, and was now going out at night to discuss something incredible. The guy noted to himself how untimely everything was, and said that it was difficult to talk about it. She said with surprise that it was not worth doing strange things, because then it would be difficult to stop. The young man shouted sharply that she had misunderstood everything and was thinking about the wrong thing. Soon he reached the coffee shop where the meeting was to take place, and began to look around. The guy looked at the sign of the establishment and doubted whether he had come to the right place. He was met by that same nice girl. She looked very stylish and reserved, complimenting this with her beautiful appearance. She introduced herself as Julie, the manager of Sonar Pulse, and stated that they really liked his song. Then the girl asked him why he still didn't want to be a star. The guy calmly replied that he simply didn't like this kind of life. He preferred to remain a simple person. Julie said that one song would be enough to make him rich and offered to sell the copyright. He declined the offer but agreed to discuss licensing the song. The manager approved of the idea and added that with his current popularity, the price would be high, even though he was a newcomer. The boy interrupted her, saying that he agreed to discuss the details and get down to business. Julie offered two options. The first was a full buyout, the second was $50,000 now and 50% of subsequent sales of the song. The guy accepted the second option, but offered to increase the amount to $100,000, which was quite impudent. The girl agreed, noting that this was the first deal, and she hoped that they would be able to work well together. Rin smiled and extended his hand to her as a sign of a successful conclusion. Julie shook it in response, and the deal was effectively sealed. They moved on to the official part, signing the contract. After reading it, Rin said that everything was fine, except for the specified amount. The manager got up from the table and assured that the money would be transferred tomorrow, and the company would start selling the song. She also suggested that the guy contact her for information about sales. Then she paused briefly and mentioned another proposal. The girl said that it would be great if he joined the Sonar Pulse company. But in response, the guy reminded that he had already said that he did not want to be a star. She clarified that their company employs more than just artists. He could become a producer. She also added that the guy, having previously worked in a similar company, should know that the main role is played not by the singers, but by other people. They both said at the same time that these are the ones who control the artists. Julie began to tell him that there was an uncrowned king behind the curtain. The guy liked the offer, but he only agreed to try it for now. When saying goodbye to Rin, the girl said that she hoped that he would come to their company to discuss the remaining details. A melody started playing outside, and the boys turned around at the sound they heard. It was a street musician. Julie liked the song, and she was sure that this track could be made popular. Rin in turn headed home, with thoughts of rest. At the entrance, the guy met a drunk girl, and she asked him to wait a minute. It was Frances, and the young man asked her how much she had drunk. Leaning against him, she replied that only a little bit, and asked him to help. He asked if she was okay and if she was feeling sick because she didn't look very good. The girl did not respond to this and asked to be taken home. Approaching the door, Rin pointed at it and said that the girl was already home. All that was left was to enter. The mistress had already begun to fall asleep on the guy's shoulder and did not answer. The guy carefully opened the girl's bag and began looking for the keys among the pile of things. After he found the keys, he quietly opened the door and gradually led the girl into the room. After laying Frances down on the sofa in the living room, he said that if she was okay, he would go home. Also seeing the whole picture, he thought to himself, what is good about alcohol? At that time, the girl uncovered herself and began to say that she was hot. The guy did not pay attention, thinking that she was dressed, so she would not freeze. Then he heard an unpleasant sound from behind him and immediately understood what was happening. The girl started to vomit. Rin quickly realized and held out a bucket to her. After laying her down again, hoping that she would finally fall asleep, he gently wiped her mouth. The guy decided that the girl still needed to be undressed and asked her not to worry. He would close his eyes. He began to gently unbutton her dress and take it off little by little. Then he picked her up and carried her from the hall to the room he thought was the bedroom. The guy carefully laid the girl on the bed. She didn't make a sound. After covering her up, he took the dirty sheet to throw in the wash after the unpleasant situation. Frances asked Rin in her sleep not to leave, saying that she needed his help. The guy quietly closed the door and told the girl to rest a little and regain her strength. Arriving home, the young man sat down at the computer. The news feed flashed headlines about his performance and song. It also wrote that the company Star Media stated that they did not terminate the contract with Rin. The young man just sighed heavily, thinking to himself how difficult it all was. He had only sung one song. Morning came. Rin woke up, stretched, and reached his hand to the nightstand to take the phone. However, instead of a phone, he felt something warm in his palm. The boy instantly opened his eyes and looked at his hand. Frances was standing in front of him. He stood up convulsively and asked how the girl had ended up there. She calmly replied that, of course, with the help of a key. The guy was surprised and asked why she had the keys to his house. To this, Frances reminded him that she was the owner of the apartment, and it would be strange if she didn't have the keys. After a short pause, the girl raised her voice and asked if he had done something to her last night. Rin, worried, replied that he had done nothing. He had only helped her get home and cleaned her up. Frances calmed down and apologized for her words. After that, she asked him what he was going to do next and offered to help him with the work. The guy replied that he didn't need help, since he had already made arrangements with one company. The girl said goodbye and left, saying that she needed to get some sleep. This large and beautiful building housed the office of the Sonar Pulse company. Rin took out his phone, called Julie, and informed her that he had already arrived and was ready to follow further instructions. The girl told him to wait a little because she would be coming down now. When she met him, Julie noted that he was a little early, but suggested that he go upstairs while she tidied up and prepared the money. As they were going up in the elevator, the girl started telling them that the 16th and 17th floors belonged to poets and singers. In the future, Rin could work there too. Julie asked if he was sure he didn't want to be a star, since with such talent, he was guaranteed a happy and successful life. She added that if he wanted to sign a contract with their company, she would offer him better conditions. The guy told her not to get her hopes up because he didn't like life without personal space. He thought to himself and noted that he had already suffered enough. Once upstairs, Julie led him down the hall, showing him the office. She added that if he wanted to work for them, this was where he would be. She also mentioned that the work schedule is flexible, as creativity requires inspiration. Then the girl showed the restroom and said that you can play or sleep here. No one will object, the main thing is to do your job. Rin asked with interest how the salary calculation works. Julie explained that the fixed salary is 10,000, and the rest is a percentage of the song sales. She added that when she started out, she got 10% from each song. The guy was surprised and asked why it was so little. She replied that she couldn't do anything about it because there were many other expenses. However, it wasn't forever. When he became a senior composer, the percentage would increase. Julie also noted that if he becomes the king of songs, he will receive 100% of the profits. Rin became very interested in how to become that very king of songs, and he asked the girl. She explained that it was simple math. If 5 songs made it onto the monthly top music list, he would become a senior composer. And to become the king, you need to come up with at least 3 classical songs, and the audience will decide. She also asked him if he had any more questions. The guy replied that everything was crystal clear to him. The girl brought the guy to his new colleagues, introduced him as a new partner, and asked everyone to be friendly with him. Colleagues joyfully greeted the newcomer and welcomed him to his new place. Julie also showed him his workspace and added that if he needed anything, he could always contact her. While Rin was getting to know the new place, he accidentally overheard the girls talking about the so-called newcomer of the nation. One of them noted that after such a successful performance, he immediately left the program. She also added that she watched the news and really liked the song Stubborn. She even listens to it on repeat. The girls continued to discuss that they were interested in who the composer of this song was. One of the girls, visibly agitated, said that she had heard that because of this scandal, people from the Star Media Company had gotten into serious trouble. The other girl responded with bewilderment that it was not surprising, because they had lost such an important contract, and their boss was probably furious. The girls turned their attention to Rin. One of them cautiously said that he seemed very familiar to her. The guy, slightly confused, asked why his face seemed familiar to them and whether they could have seen him somewhere before. The girl waved her hand and suggested forgetting about it, adding that she was unlikely to be able to remember. Rin sighed and decided to check the latest news on his phone. Just at that moment, he received a call from an unknown number. He picked up the phone and calmly asked who it was. The guy was surprised to notice the incoming call and still answered, preparing for the unexpected. The other end of the line asked if they had reached the right address and if he could talk now. Rin replied that he was listening carefully. It was one of the competition organizers who asked if the young man would like to take part in the program again. The guy frowned and firmly replied that he was no longer bound by the contract and did not want to change anything, even if he was offered to perform as an independent musician. After completing his inspection of the place, he approached Julie to ask what he should do next. She asked him to follow her. The manager, slightly quickening her pace, announced that they were heading to the meeting room. The girls who remained behind began to whisper and were extremely surprised that the guy was immediately invited into the hall. One of his colleagues warned the guy that it would be better for him to keep his mouth shut so as not to displease his superiors. They also discussed how the boss had been extremely irritable lately and perhaps they shouldn't have brought the guy there in the first place. Another girl added with concern that Julie had sent Rin straight into the lion's mouth and expressed concern for him. Another colleague asked curiously if she really liked the guy and wondered why she was so worried about him. The girl thoughtfully noted that the guy's appearance was quite attractive, despite his poor appearance and the fact that his first song had not yet been released. Meanwhile, the guys entered the meeting room, where the experts were enthusiastically working on writing a song. Suddenly, a shout caught their attention. It was Henry, the CEO. He was loudly complaining that he had only asked for a little effort and that they had, according to him, given him some garbage. The man continued, indignant that they had a whole month to write a theme song, but still no results. Henry turned to Julie and asked if it was true that the talented guy standing in front of him was the one she had told him about. The girl confirmed this, adding that the guy had only recently joined, and she decided to show him how the work was going. The boss, squinting, said that the guy needed to be tested and ordered a workplace to be prepared for him. He abruptly ordered his colleagues to finally write the song, warning that no one would leave the room until the work was completed. Rin sat down at the table and asked one of his colleagues with interest what kind of song exactly needed to be written. The young man, sighing with displeasure, explained that a love song was needed for a film. But the boss didn't like any of the ready-made compositions. Another colleague added gloomily that Bill was too picky and didn't know what he wanted. They complained that the deadline was today and they had no choice, even though they had no more ideas. Rin thought about what he could write, and quickly set about the upcoming work. After a short time, he abruptly closed the laptop, attracting the attention of his colleagues. The boss frowned and asked if he had run out of strength or what had happened, warning that there would be no leniency. One of his colleagues quietly nudged the guy in the shoulder and whispered that he should at least pretend to work. He, in a calm voice, firmly stated that he had already finished writing. Henry, his eyes wide with surprise, asked again what exactly he had finished. A colleague nearby was surprised and remarked that he would never in his life believe this. The boss, waving his hand in annoyance, declared that the guy couldn't have written a song in less than 5 minutes. However, after a moment he calmed down and told me to send the song to him by email, adding that Rin might be free. The guy left the room smiling while the boss continued to yell at the rest of his colleagues. Meanwhile, a new discussion broke out in the Star Media office. Bill, the CEO, angrily reminded them that he had asked for the singer to be brought to the office, but no one had ever done so. Derek, visibly nervous, defended himself, claiming that he had really tried, but at the same time he believed that Rin did not take his job seriously. Bill, seething with anger, shouted that this guy was now at the peak of his popularity, and the internet was simply abuzz with ridicule of their company. At one point, he grabbed Derek by the arm and accused him of being the one to blame for things getting to this point. He demanded to know how he could break the contract before an important performance. Mattis was also present at the meeting. She only heard Bill, in a fit of anger, call everyone helpless. The artistic director began to stutter and apologize to the director, but still tried to explain his point of view. Bill, although extremely angry, suddenly fell silent and began to listen to him attentively. Derek revealed that the team had planned to reveal Jack and Yumi's relationship on the contest's official website to promote them together. He felt that Rin would be a hindrance to that. These words made the director even more indignant. He asked why they were promoting Jack at all and who he was to waste effort on him. Bill also recalled that ever since the song Stubborn became popular and Rin left the project, the entire public lost interest in them, and this only made the situation worse. Turning to Metis, he asked if it was true that Rin and Yumi were so close. The girl confirmed that they used to be very close, but added that now everything has changed. Bill ordered Yumi to talk to the guy personally and bring him back to the project. He also suggested that they perform together. When Mattis tried to object to the matter, Bill immediately interrupted her. He then turned to Derek again, this time threatening that if he did not carry out the order, he could forget about performing in the near future. He slammed his palm loudly on the table, declared the meeting over, and ordered everyone to disperse. Yumi, who was in the office at the time, noticed the agent leaving and immediately asked how the meeting went. The girl, shaking her head, replied that Bill was completely desperate, and now hoped that only Yumi could convince Rin to return. The singer, barely containing her excitement, admitted that she was not sure whether the young man would want to come back. Mattis argued that it was worth a try because before he responded to all the girl's requests and was ready to do a lot for her. She also added that the guy was an obedient boy at the time and suggested giving him another chance to run after the girl. The girl smiled slightly and agreed to try to pull this off. At this time, Rin was sitting at his workplace, and loud shouts could be heard from the boss's office about how all the proposed songs were complete garbage. Henry, staring at his laptop screen, was going through the songs and yelling that they were no good at all. Hearing the screams, Julie walked into the office and asked what had happened to make him so angry. The boss was indignant. He couldn't believe that not a single worthwhile song had been written in all this time, and he declared that their work would soon have to be transferred to the 17th floor. The girl asked how Rin had done with the task, as it was important to her. The man asked again who she was talking about. The very new guy she had brought? Then he added that the guy wrote the song in about 5 minutes, and he wasn't even going to listen to it, and told him not to try to deceive him anymore. Julie was a little surprised, and admitting that 5 minutes was indeed fast, she still asked her boss to take a look at the song. Maybe it was good. Henry just waved it off and lazily stated that he would send everything to the 17th floor, let them figure out what they needed there. The manager noted with a smile that she couldn't help in any way, since everyone had a lot of work right now. The boss exhaled a cloud of smoke from his cigarette, resigned himself to what was happening, and relaxed. Meanwhile, Christopher, the main guy on the 17th floor, received a file with songs. He studied them carefully and was shocked by how primitive the lyrics were. The young man sarcastically noted to his colleagues that such songs could only be written by those who did not go to school or college. One of the guys suggested choosing something, because they still had to shoot the movie, and the song wasn't that important. But Christopher objected, saying that he had spent too much effort on it and that a good film needed a corresponding song. He screamed that their film was great and the song should be no worse, but the current selection was just awful. As he continued to browse the file, he noticed a song called Those Years. As he began to read the lyrics, he was suddenly moved and pleasantly surprised. Creative tears even appeared in his eyes. The song touched him to the depths of his soul and even returned him to his youth. His colleagues tried to calm him down, saying that he shouldn't take all this so seriously and that they would come up with something. One of the guys assured that they would do everything possible to help him with the choice of song. Christopher, rubbing his eyes, asked with a slight smile if he could really cry from anger. Then, with a joyful gleam in his eyes, he said that he had found that very song and told his colleagues to take a look at this creation. Colleagues were pleasantly surprised. The lyrics of the song really turned out to be good. One of them noted that the song is promising and surpasses all the others. Another added that the lyrics were very atmospheric and he immediately felt warmth. The boss confirmed that this song is perfect for their film, and they should take it. He expressed the opinion that the song will become not just a hit, but a classic for an entire generation, and in the near future he will agree on further actions. At this time, Henry was sitting in his office and thinking that all the songs he had sent were complete failures. Suddenly the phone rang. He immediately thought that it was probably someone calling from the 17th floor. Picking up the phone, he heard his son's voice, who said that he and his mother were waiting for him at home for dinner and asked him to come back quickly. Henry smiled and replied that he would be home soon and they would have dinner together. The man was driving through the city at night, anticipating a delicious meal, and was absolutely calm. The phone rang again. This time it was Christopher, and Henry was ready to talk. Having collected his thoughts a little, he excitedly but confidently picked up the phone. He immediately began to explain that he understood his mistakes and admitted that their work did not meet the requirements, but promised that they would try harder in the future. In response, he heard words that shocked him so much that he slammed on the brakes in the middle of the road. Henry asked if they really liked any of their songs. At this time, other drivers scolded him for stopping on the road. Christopher assured that he would not have lied and thanked the man personally, adding that without him they would hardly have found such a song. He asked when he could see the full version, as he couldn't wait. Henry, smiling, assured that the song would be ready tomorrow, and they would do everything as quickly as possible. The young man also mentioned that there had been misunderstandings between them before and apologized for being rude. The man agreed, adding that he understood everything because it was work, and then asked which song they liked. Christopher named the song Those Years, and added that he always believed in them and knew that they would not disappoint. Henry asked again if he really meant this song, since it was written in just 5 minutes. The guy replied that it doesn't matter how many minutes it took to write. The main thing is the emotions it evokes. As Henry got out of the car, he wondered if he was dreaming, because it all seemed strange to him. At that time, Julie was at training and running on the treadmill when the call came. When she picked up the phone, she heard her boss's voice asking who this guy was that she had brought to them. He continued that Christopher chose a song for his film and it was Rin's song. The girl replied that it was wonderful and she would contact the guy personally. While changing after training, she immediately called the young man to tell him the news. When the guy picked up the phone, the girl immediately started saying that she had good news. His song was chosen by the 17th floor, and it would be in the film. In response, she heard from the guy only that he understood everything and clarified why the guy was so calm. He should be happy about this. Rin said affirmatively that if they hadn't chosen his song, they would have been complete fools, and said that he was already home and had said goodbye to the girl. Julie said to herself in surprise that she didn't know whether it was confidence or arrogance, and after a short pause she said that in any case she had picked up the treasure. In the morning, Rin woke up in a good mood and went to the store for groceries. At that time, Frances was doing her morning exercises in her room when she heard a knock on the door. Opening the door, the girl asked what happened that the guy came so early. With a smile on his face and bags of groceries in his hands, the guy said that things were going well at work, and he had bought a lot of food to celebrate. The girl answered happily that he had come to the right place and told him to go cook, and she would take a shower and come to his room. Frances was a very attractive girl, a little older than the boy, but you could tell from her figure that she was really good. At that time, Rin was in the process of cooking when there was a knock on the door. The guy was surprised that the girl had finished so quickly. When he opened the door, he was very surprised, and the question immediately came from his lips as to why she had come. It was Yumi. Without explaining anything, she asked permission to enter. The guy was a little angry, but still, out of respect, he let the girl in. Lowering her glasses a little, she said that she didn't think she'd end up here again. The matter moved on to a cup of tea. The girl began to say that she really wanted to help Rin, but then the competition was already approaching the beginning, and she could not do anything, and asked for an apology. The guy simply replied that it was all in the past. He doesn't live in the past. He also started looking for something in his nightstand, felt one thing with his fingers, and asked the girl if he remembered correctly that it belonged to her. Taking out a small, beautiful statuette, he placed it on the table and told the girl to take it with her. Yumi was a little touched by this moment, as she had previously given this statue to a guy. He also added that she could sit for a while. By that time, Rin had already finished cooking and offered the girl a snack, putting the dishes on the table. The young girl stood up from the table and began to say that she did not come here for food. She needed the guy to do something for her. The young man calmly replied that if it was about returning to the company, then she could forget about it. He had already let it go and was moving on. The girl asked the guy in a sweet voice to do this thing for her one last time. He chuckled and simply responded that he had no negative feelings towards her or the company. He felt absolutely nothing and had no intention of returning. She continued her attempts and began to talk about how she saw him cooking, and now she was thinking about one thing. This is the very life they once dreamed of. Rin said that he was already a different person, and she could forget about that good old guy, and asked her not to remember it anymore. The girl, clinging to him, asked if he was sure that this was the life he wanted. In response, she heard that the guy had always wanted to live like this. But previously, he only had thoughts about how to get there. But now there was reality. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door with the girl saying that she had finished taking a shower and asked for the door to be opened. Yumi was surprised and even a little angry, asking who this girl was. The guy grinned and began to open the door handle, clarifying that it was just his landlord. Frances was standing outside the door and noted that she could smell it even from behind the door, and if the guy suddenly lost his job, he could go to be a chef. Rin shyly replied that he only cooked for himself, and if he was allowed into a professional kitchen, he wouldn't be able to do much of anything. Noticing the girl who sat down at the table, Frances asked the guy if he was expecting guests. The young man clarified that they were just passing by and decided to come to him, and that the girl would soon be leaving. Frances leaned her elbows on the table and looked at Yumi attentively, which the latter did not like very much. And then the question came whether she was dating a guy or if they were just friends. Rin answered for Yumi, saying that it wasn't like that, they were just good acquaintances. Rubbing her palms contentedly, the girl said that it was wonderful, and in that case she was lucky. The singer began to say that she remembered that she still had things to do and that she would not be able to stay to eat, she would have to go. The guy looked at her with a cold gaze and confirmed that it was time for her to leave. The situation really hurt the girl's pride, and she jumped up and walked sharply towards the door. Frances didn't even have time to say goodbye to her when she heard the door slam loudly. She asked the guy in surprise. Perhaps she had arrived at the wrong time. The boy replied that everything was fine and suggested they start eating, and also added that it was thanks to the girl that he was able to overcome difficulties and find himself in his place. The girl, after trying the food, said that the guy's cooking skills were very good and everything was very tasty. The young man was flattered and said that she could eat as much as she wanted, since he didn't cook often. At that time, on the street, Yumi was heading to the car where her manager was waiting for her. Metis immediately asked the girl how everything went, whether Rin agreed. When he answered in the negative, she added that there would be a commotion in the office tomorrow because the news was bad. At that time, there was only one picture in front of Yumi's eyes, the girl she saw. And she suddenly and slightly screamed out loud her displeasure. The manager in turn immediately asked what happened, and she asked excitedly whether the guy had taken advantage of her or was making fun of her, and asked her to tell the truth right away. The young girl responded in surprise that nothing like that had happened, and that she need not worry. Yumi also started asking why the company was holding on to the guy so tightly, since he only had one successful song. Mattis, handing the girl the phone, expressed her understanding of her concerns, but asked her to look at this too. The singer was very surprised and at the same time unhappy with the text she saw on her phone. The news was from the competition organizers. The text said that Rin would no longer be taking part in the competition, and they were very sorry about it. The girl immediately asked why so many people were ready to fight for a guy. The manager replied that it was all about the song Stubborn. It really did cause a sensation. And she also added that if the guy suddenly wants to come back, he can use the opportunity to fly even higher. The girl desperately asked the agent if she should try to talk to him again in that case. The only response was that it was her personal desire, but if Yumi sang with a guy, their duet would be at the peak of popularity. The girl was truly at a loss, as she had to overcome her pride, and asked the question again. Mattis replied that it would be better for her to forget, because the girl showed that she did not want to do this, and no one could force her. The singer responded by asking what she should do in that case, since she can't just lose popularity. The manager advised her to wait a while until everything calmed down and people forgot about the song. In response, the girl asked what to do if this does not happen. Mattis said that otherwise the company would take other measures, but since the guy is now on everyone's lips, they are trying to get him back. And she also added that talent alone is not enough for success, and now you just need to wait it out, and then we'll see. By that time, Francis and Rin had already finished their meal. She sat down on the sofa and asked why it was so hot in here. She also asked if his air conditioner was working, because she would die in this heat. The guy replied that the air conditioner had been broken for a month and hadn't been fixed yet. Stretching, the girl said that he could have told her about it, and she, as the owner, would have sorted it out, and added that she would solve the problem. Having thanked him for the delicious food, the girl went to her room and wished the guy a good day. Rin was getting ready for his new job and was riding the subway when he overheard a conversation. Two girls were discussing a post they had published on the page of the Newcomer of the Nation contest, and were saying that Stubborn couldn't just leave on his own, and that something was wrong. Also, one of the girls thought that it was quite possible, but the second one claimed that she did not believe the program and that he was most likely threatened. She was very sorry that the guy left the competition. As he was riding the elevator in the office, Rin met his colleague from the floor above, one of the girls who had also spoken about him at the time. A beautiful girl asked him how the meeting with the boss went and whether he had been scolded. The young man noted that the boss really did look scary, but clarified that everything was fine. The girl added that the guy was new here and advised not to anger Henry, especially now, when they were in such a rush. The guy thanked the girl for the advice and said that she didn't have to worry about him so much. The girl also became interested and asked where Rin had received his training. He replied, a little embarrassed, that he had graduated from high school, the most ordinary one in his area. The colleague was surprised and said that this couldn't be. How did he get here then? And realizing that she had said something stupid, she apologized and said that she hadn't meant it that way, but that she had simply never encountered anything like it before. The guy clarified that everything was fine, and he was simply often absent from school and worked so that his ex-girlfriend could study at a music school, and then he was expelled. The girl stared at him with wide eyes, puzzled. Continuing her speech, she said that Julie had brought him here and clarified that perhaps in that case she was a relative of the guy. The young man silently looked at his colleague and said that they needed to work. The girl thought to herself, what was hidden behind this face and who he was? Arriving at their floor as they were leaving the elevator, the guys noticed the boss, who, as usual, was walking sullenly down the corridor. The girl greeted her boss with a smile on her face and wished him a good day. The man turned around with displeasure and only nodded his head dryly at her. But looking a little further, he saw the guy, and immediately his face changed and he greeted him. Rin greeted his boss in the same way, while his colleague next to him was becoming increasingly perplexed. The man put his hand on the guy's shoulder and said that they needed to go into the office because they had something to talk about. The girl looked at their backs and could not understand what was happening here. At her desk, she also started a discussion with a colleague and asked if she thought it was strange. She replied that it was indeed strange, but she had some guesses. And she continued that if, according to him, he had just finished school and Julie had brought him, that was really suspicious. Finishing her guesses, she confidently said that the guy must be hiding something important. The conversation had already begun in the boss's office. The man asked Rin if he wanted tea or coffee. The guy replied that a mug of warm water would be quite enough. Nothing more was needed. Henry, while serving water, began to talk about how he didn't realize from the first meeting that Rin was an unusual guy. He also patted him on the back and said that the youth today are good, and he really likes it. Getting down to business, he said that the young man's song had been chosen by the 17th floor, but that some work still needed to be done, and asked whether he needed a senior composer to assist him. The guy replied that he could write the song himself, but specified who exactly would choose the singer to perform it. The boss replied that they would choose the singer, and he would send the information later. He also specified that it would be nice to do it as soon as possible. Rin replied that he would try, and the man also added that the guy could contact him with any questions. The young man already had a question. It concerned the profit from the song, and he asked it right away. Henry replied that the contract price for the song was $300,000. The guy would get 30%. In response, the guy asked why it was so little. Only $90,000, because he had expected more. The man clarified that this was simply a license fee for them, and if they dared to pay less, he would not accept the deal. The guy sat down at his workplace and, sighing a little, collected his thoughts to finish the song. Then the same colleague he met in the elevator approached him and asked how the conversation with the boss went. Rin replied that it was nothing special. He just told them to get back to work. The girl asked whether she had a good relationship with the boss or why they were already communicating in person. The guy, having started work, said that he had just arrived and could not yet say whether they were good or bad. Turning back, the girl saw a young man standing in the office. After telling Rin to look at him, the guy clarified what exactly she meant. She started saying that it was Patrick. He was a senior composer and had good potential to become the king of songs in the future. She also added that they have a good relationship, and that she will now introduce him to her boyfriend. And she clarified that Patrick is usually cold to others, and if the guy approached him himself, he would most likely ignore it. The girl greeted the senior composer and began talking about getting to know each other. But before he could even finish his speech, he immediately turned towards the young guy. Colleagues in the office looked at this and were surprised, since Patrick very rarely leaves his personal office, and wondered why he came. Looking at Rin, the young man said with a smile that he was glad that he was finally able to find him. The guy, not realizing that the address was addressed to him, asked if he was the one he wanted to find. In response, he only heard that they needed to talk, and it wouldn't take long. Rin asked to wait a few minutes as he needed to finish his work. Patrick agreed with the guy and sat behind him, waiting for the conversation. The girl also exchanged glances with her colleague, not really understanding what was going on. And I asked the guy what kind of reaction this was, whether they knew each other. The guy replied that, not really. Yesterday they met in the conference room and sat opposite each other. Rin stood up from the table and clarified that he was finished and ready to talk. Patrick pointed his finger at the reception room and said that they should go there. The guys headed into the hall, collecting the glances of all the other colleagues in the hall. Sitting down at the table, Rin asked what had happened and what the conversation would be about. In response, the guy, feeling uncomfortable, asked to forget what happened yesterday. The young man, not really understanding what exactly was being discussed, began to recall yesterday. He remembered Patrick raising his hand and asking to go to the toilet because he was so impatient. But Henry, in a fit of anger, said that no one would go anywhere, and that he should keep everything to himself. Rin wondered to himself, wondering if he really couldn't hold back. Confused, the guy said that he wouldn't tell anyone anything, and even if they hadn't met, he would have already forgotten about it. After thanking the guy, Patrick began to talk about how he knew that a song had already been chosen for the film, but he didn't know whose exactly it was. The conversation was interrupted by Julie, who entered the room and asked if she was disturbing. The senior composer immediately stood up and said that no, and if she had business with Rin, then he would leave. The girl sat down at the table and asked the guy with interest what had happened. In response, the guy said that nothing unusual had happened, and they had just talked. The girl clarified that this was unusual, since Patrick doesn't really talk to anyone. But she got down to business, putting a list of singers who came to the audition on the table. The guy in the role of producer has already started working, listening to the performance of his song, but so far no candidate has come forward. Then an attractive young guy named Juan walked into the building. They started singing. Rin looked at them with a different look and a smile on his face, realizing that this was the same candidate. The guy told Julie to warn the others that they could leave because he had already found his singer. The girl in turn did not contradict the guy, went out to the candidates and said that everyone could go free. Rin also noticed that the guy had tears in his eyes during the song, and he asked him why he was crying. He replied that he remembered his first love, who rejected him, and that's why it happened. The young man responded to this normally, saying that it was normal to be bored, but advised her to leave everything in the past. Julie stretched and said that she had sent the song to Henry and that it was probably already at the 17th floor. She then turned to Juan, telling him that he could be free to go home as they were finished for the day. Turning to Rin, she began to say that there was something else that needed to be discussed with him. But their conversation was interrupted by the boss, who abruptly opened the door, almost knocking down the singer, but with a smile on his face. He started saying that everything was amazing, and added that Christopher said that when the film was online and became popular, he would thank the guy personally. The girl noticed that the man was too happy about this, and clarified that it was not difficult for him at all. Continuing, she asked the guy when the song would be released, under what name he would present it or keep his own. Rin replied that his name would be Not Passing Through Mortals, and that he was thinking of stopping there. Julie was very surprised by this choice and asked why exactly that one. The young man explained that he sometimes felt like this world was full of suffering, and if he were given a choice, he would never return here. Through the door to the studio, he saw a large crowd of people in the hall, all focused intently on something. The guy was surprised and asked Julie what exactly happened and why such a crowd had gathered. She explained that there was a meeting going on about the nation's newcomer and asked him to follow her. Rin sat down in the chair at the desk in the office and met his colleague. She greeted him again. The young man joked in response that she was here again and, surprisingly, next to him again. He moved the chair next to him and invited the girl to sit down. Leaning closer to him, she whispered that these seats were only for senior composers. At this time, Julie began her opening speech, welcoming everyone present. She was immediately interrupted by a man, the deputy director of the 17th floor, Ludwig. He apologized to the girl and said that he would start speaking first. Noticing Rin in the hall, who was sitting in a place not intended for him, the man frowned and stated that before he began, he was interested in one thing. He added that the man sitting there looked unfamiliar to him, and that he was seeing him for the first time. The girl intervened and said that this was their new employee, whom she personally recently brought in. The man politely but rudely asked the girl not to interrupt him and to show respect. Julie looked down, feeling a little uncomfortable, and apologized to him. Here Ludwig, shouting to the whole hall, began to say that if a guy is new, it does not mean that he should break the rules, and clarified that these chairs are intended exclusively for senior composers. Rin responded calmly, telling the man that this was the 16th floor, and he would follow the rules of the 17th floor once he got there. All the colleagues in the room immediately looked at each other and looked at the guy, surprised by his answer. This angered the man, and he shouted at the girl to ask if this was really the person she had brought. Pointing his finger at the young man, he continued that he didn't know any rules, didn't respect his boss, and suggested that he be fired immediately. The girl, in turn, reminded the man that this was not his floor, and she was not accepting his offer. Ludwig replied that he understood everything, and added that they were doing quite well here in that case. Now the girl made the man feel uncomfortable by saying only that she thanked him for his understanding. But the man, not calming down, declared that if this newcomer did not give up, they would get down to business. However, his pride got the better of him, and he turned to the guy again, saying that he should have had a good reason to sit in that chair, since not everyone had the right to do so. In response, the guy calmly noted that he would sit here, since the seat was free and he was not bothering anyone. Julie placed her hands on the table and began to say that the new season of the nation's newcomer competition was about to begin, and their company was planning to introduce 30 singers to perform. Pointing to the folders lying on the table, she clarified that they contained information about the singers, and these materials would be sent to everyone by mail, including the files with the voices. She continued that everyone should choose a singer and start writing a song, after which the best of them will be chosen to take part in the competition. Turning to Ludwig, she asked if he had anything to add. In response, the man said discontentedly that he did not, and declared the meeting closed. After the meeting, the colleague sat down next to Rin and said that he was very brave and had really angered the deputy director because he was an influential person. Patrick approached Rin and said that Ludwig would now put pressure on him, but assured him that if he needed help, he could always ask for it. Julie, in turn, did not say anything to the guy about the incident, just waved her hand and asked him to choose a good singer. The guy opened the materials and immediately asked what the rating of singers indicated in the documents meant. The girl clarified that it means their popularity in the company, from level A to level D. She added that A-level singers are well paid and sought after by senior composers, while the latter are hardly noticed and often come to try their luck. Rin immediately confidently stated that he knew from which rating he would choose his singer. The colleague, leaning over to the guy to also look at the lists, asked who he liked from the A level and suggested that he contact Julie to get in touch with the singer. The guy, closing the folder, calmly said that he was going to take a singer from level D, and this was his final decision. The girl, smiling, noted that he seemed to want to annoy the deputy director. She added that the idea was hopeless, but at the same time, funny. The young man objected that she was mistaken. It was not about Ludwig, but about the fact that singers of the D level were cheaper. The girl looked at him in surprise. After some time, while sitting in the office, Julie heard a knock on the door and said that she could come in. It was Rin. The girl immediately asked what had happened and whether he had understood the rules for selecting singers. In response, the guy said that he had already finished writing the lyrics to the song and asked how he could send it. The girl, almost spitting out the water she was drinking, noticed with surprise that the meeting had ended half an hour ago, and he had already managed to write a song. The guy calmly replied that if he finished work early, it meant he could go home early. Taking the sheet of paper with the lyrics, the girl reminded him that many senior composers were participating in this competition. She added that if he was going to take a singer of level A, he should be mentally prepared. Rin assured her that she need not worry. He said that he wanted to give the song to Margaret. Julie was surprised and asked who he meant, as she knew almost all the high-level singers. The guy explained that Margaret was a D-level girl and that he was going to give this song to her. Putting her hand on her face, the manager said that others would prefer to choose high-level singers even without additional payment, but he, with such an opportunity, does the exact opposite. However, without contradicting the guy, she began to read the lyrics of the song, which was called To the South of the Southern Mountain, and noted that the title sounded intriguing. Rin had already returned home and, opening the front door, saw a girl behind him. It was Frances. She asked the guy if he had eaten yet and if he had any free time. The young man replied that he was hungry and had time. She suggested that they go to her place and cook dinner together. With sweet eyes, she added if he could help her with the cooking. Rin, although he was tired, replied that, of course he would help. It wouldn't be difficult for him. There was a lot of food on the table. The girl said that all this needed to be cooked, and specified that there was also a huge lobster in the refrigerator that could be used. Leaning towards the guy, she asked again if he was ready to help. Rin replied that the girl could just wait, and he would do everything himself. Sitting on the sofa with a glass of red wine, Frances noted that the most important thing is that everything tastes good. She added that a friend would soon come to see her, with whom she was going to introduce him. The girl specified that her friend was very beautiful. The guy thanked the girl for the warning but couldn't find what to say in response to her words. She noted that politeness was not necessary here, and said that he seemed to have a good character. She added that she had thought of something. Rin turned to her and asked in bewilderment if she was going to set him up with someone, noting that he was not interested. The girl calmed him down by saying that she wanted to offer him a job. She noted that she didn't know very well what he did, but her offer was really good. At that moment, her phone rang. It was her friend who said that she was on her way. Getting up from the couch, Frances asked her friend to come in through the back door as it was safer. This made the guy wary. There was a girl wearing dark glasses and a mask standing on the street. It looked like she was hiding from someone. Frances, running out into the street, saw her friend and immediately ran to her, saying that she was so busy that it was a great rarity to see her. The girl replied that it was not that difficult and added that she could always come, because she would be happy to receive her. The hostess noted that this could be forgotten, since her friend did not want reporters to stare at her. Holding hands, the guest noted that her assistant could always help with this and organize a quiet meeting. The girl dragged her friend home, saying that she had guests at her house and that she should try what the guy had cooked, and asked her not to scare him too much. The beauties had already entered the house, and the hostess's friend finally began to take off her disguise. Rin greeted the girl and told them to wait a little as the food would be ready soon. Frances thought to herself in surprise. Did he really not recognize this girl, since he reacted so calmly? Soon the table was already set. The girls noted that everything looked delicious, but they needed to try it. They took their first bite and froze in pleasant surprise at the taste. They also said in one voice that it was wonderful, and they were ready to eat it every day. The guy sat quietly, enjoying the food he had prepared, and didn't really say anything. Suddenly, a light kick from the landlady hit his leg under the table. He immediately looked up. Surprised, he asked what had happened. Perhaps something was wrong with the taste of the food, or he had not cooked it enough. Frances asked the guy why he was silent, because there was such a beautiful girl here, and he didn't even look at her. The guy immediately apologized for his rudeness and introduced himself, giving his name. The guest also greeted the guy, noting that the food was really delicious. She gave her name, Violetta. The young man was stunned to realize that he had not recognized the girl at first, and wondered if he had understood what was happening correctly. Violetta was a very famous TV presenter and actress, as well as a representative of one of the largest companies in the world of television. As the meal continued, Frances began the conversation by saying that it was good to be young and healthy, adding that the young man had an excellent appetite. Rin responded by noting that the girl also looked young, and if she were wearing a school uniform, she could be mistaken for a high school student. She laughingly replied that this was, of course, not true, but added that he knew how to speak beautifully. After giving her friend a playful hug, the hostess said that they had 2 school uniforms, and they could put them on to show the guy. The young man imagined this picture in his head for a few seconds, which caused a slight smile. Frances turned to the guest and asked how she liked the young man, since she had previously asked him to find someone to work for her. She smiled, and replied that she would think about it, since she was in no hurry. The guy asked in bewilderment what all this meant and what was going on here. She replied that all he needed to know was that she was trying to find him a good job. He objected that there was no point, since he already had a good job and was quite happy with it. The girl told him not to argue because she was worried about him, and it was a really good opportunity to make money. After dinner, when the girls were alone, they started discussing Rin. The hostess asked the guest what she thought of the guy. Violetta said that the guy was really not bad. The next day, the guy woke up, immediately picked up his phone and saw that his song Stubborn was already up for sale. He started calculating in his head how much he could earn. Already in the office at work, a colleague approached him and asked if he had heard the latest news. In turn, he asked what exactly she meant. The girl started talking about the song. She said that as soon as the song came out, it blew up all the charts and now occupies the 5th place in the top. Many people are talking about it. The guy, with a grin and interest, asked what they were saying about this song, without mentioning that he wrote and performed it. The colleague replied that many people think that the people from Star Media are blind. Personally, she thinks only about the author of the song and assumes that he is probably sad about what happened. Rin said he thought the man wasn't sad because he could make hundreds of thousands from the song. The girl noted that the author of the song could not have been motivated only by money, and that he was probably unhappy for other reasons. In response, the guy said that the reason for the author's dissatisfaction was probably that he didn't have enough money. The colleague frowned and said that she didn't believe that a person who could write such a song only thought about money. Rin thought to himself that she talked about it so much, but she still hadn't noticed that they had the same name and that he was the author. Later, the guy came into the manager's office. Handing him a glass of water, the girl noted that she did not expect the song to be so popular. She continued that the song is currently at the top, but it would have been better if they had released it on the last day of the week. Then, it could have placed higher. The young man was not particularly interested, and asked when he could receive his percentage of sales. In response, Julie noted that others would dream of popularity, but he only sees money in front of him. The guy added that a good vacation requires good money, but now he just wants to enjoy life. The girl started saying that if they did make him a star, he would be able to earn huge amounts of money. She added that if he agreed, she would make him popular. But Rin stood his ground and said that a star is the only person who can stop whenever he wants. Julie agreed with him and said that she would not insist any longer, but she still felt sorry that such talent was wasted. She also added that the most pathetic ones now are Star Media, and that they were pretty well roasted this morning. Meanwhile, at Star Media headquarters, Bill was tearing everything apart, mostly taking his anger out on Derek. He shouted that in a couple of hours the song got to the top, and the guy had been in their company for a long time, and no one had ever revealed his potential. He asked Metis if they could try to bring Rin back one more time, since this was their only chance for salvation now. In response, the girl said that they had already tried all the options, but it was unsuccessful. The director became angry and could not control himself, slapping his subordinate, unable to control his emotions. At this time, someone knocked on Julie's office door, interrupting her conversation with the guy. It was a young guy who said that their guitarist was sick, which would mean that it might take a few days to release the song. He asked if that would cause any problems. Stretching in his chair, Rin said that they didn't have to worry because he could play and help the boys. The girl, surprised, said that it was good and that she, of course, was not against it. The group member also did not object and invited the guy to follow him. They met on the way to the studio. The guy's name was Thorn. He noticed that they had not met before, and asked Rin if he was new. The young man replied that he had just arrived. Thorn said they would first listen to the young man play. He warned them that the soundtrack was complex and asked them to take the matter seriously. The guys in the band were playing cards when they entered the studio. Thorn asked them to gather up and get to work. One of them replied that the guitarist was sick and there was no point in playing without him. They decided to relax. The guy took Rin by the hand and told the others that he had brought a new guitarist. He added that they needed to hurry because the task was not easy. The guys looked at the newcomer and asked if he would be suitable, since he didn't look like a professional guitarist. Thorn suggested trying it and seeing what the results were. If it didn't work, then they'd wait for someone else. Handing him a sheet of paper with the text, the guy asked him to read it and then get to work. He also warned that if he screwed up, the director would be unhappy. He also added that for a successful performance it is important to put soul and feelings into the song. The guy asked if 15 minutes would be enough for Rin to get acquainted with the material while they prepared everything. The young man, having read the text just once, declared that he was ready to begin. Thorn asked in surprise if he was sure he was ready to play right now. The other guys supported the idea of starting right away, adding that they would keep a close eye on what he was like. Thorn wasn't entirely sure, but he agreed, specifying that Rin would have 3 attempts. If he failed, the director would be informed. The guy started playing. Colleagues noted that for a person who read the text once, it was very good. They noticed that he also made a couple of changes to the song, but those edits only made it better. After finishing playing, Thorn ran up to the new guitarist and said that he played amazingly. He really liked it. Everyone began to wonder if this was really the first time Rin had played this song, as it seemed impossible. The guy, smiling modestly and scratching his neck, replied that it was absolutely certain that this was his first time. Thorn couldn't believe it and immediately asked which music school Rin graduated from. The young man had to answer this awkward question again, and he said that he studied in a regular high school. But this time the reaction was different. The guys noted that the main thing is not education, but experience. Rin, happy with the praise, asked if the song needed to be re-recorded again. Everyone unanimously declared that everything was perfect and thanked him for his help. However, they were interrupted by a knock on the door, followed by a female voice asking why they hadn't finished the soundtrack yet. Everyone turned to look at the woman, who continued to shout and complain about why they weren't in a hurry. Thorne approached her and apologized, explaining the situation with the sick guitarist. The woman stated that this was solely their problem, and if the release of the song was delayed, it would be their fault. Thorne tried to calm her down, adding that they had already found a new guitarist and were getting to work. The evil woman told them to do everything as quickly as possible, and warned that she was expecting a song in an hour. Rin asked who the woman was. He was told that she was Maria's manager. In turn, he asked who she was. Thorne was surprised that the guy didn't know this girl, because she was quite popular and known to many. One of her colleagues said that the girl is popular not only for her music, but also for her appearance. Her figure is something incredible. Another guy specified that Maria is a second-tier singer with a beautiful appearance. She recently wrote a song called Farewell, and they are currently writing a soundtrack for it. He also added that the singer had put a lot of effort into finding a golden composer, so it was very important. Rin asked who a golden composer was, as he had never heard of such a thing before. The man in charge of production explained that a golden composer is a level above the elder. If you become higher than him, you become the king of songs. Thorne interrupted the story, saying that they would continue later, but now they needed to finish work on the soundtrack. Turning to the newcomer, he asked him to stay and help, specifying that the previous work sent to the singer did not suit her, so now she needed to try. The guy agreed. Rin started reading the lyrics of the song, which seemed too sentimental to him. He didn't understand why this singer was so loved. Nevertheless, he did his job perfectly. Colleagues once again noted his high level of playing and ability to put emotions into any song. At this time, a dissatisfied Maria was sitting in her office, listening to her manager's stories about how the musicians were worthless and lazy, and that they were too simple for a golden composer. The girl added that if the musicians don't succeed, you should just tell their director and stop working with them. There's no point in being angry at these poor guys. The manager agreed with her and said that the musicians thought too much of themselves. She was sure that without a singer, their soundtrack was worthless. At that moment, a notification came to her phone. The manager was surprised how they managed it so quickly, because they had just recently found a new guitarist. The girl told him to give her the phone so that she could first listen to the recording herself and then discuss it with the team. Listening to the soundtrack to her song, Maria noted that the new guitarist plays even better than the previous one. The woman agreed and added that they had indeed found someone special. Maria liked everything. She said that this soundtrack has everything that is needed, and the guitarist is really good. In response, Sandra noted that in that case, they should be ready to record the song in the near future. The girl also asked the manager how she felt about keeping the guitarist with them. The woman was a little surprised, and she continued that she didn't expect such amazing skills from this guy because it's a great rarity. The manager noted that she understood what Maria was getting at and offered to get the boy, forbidding him to write songs for others so that competitors could not poach him. Maria grinned and said that the manager had understood everything correctly when she ordered her to get to work. Sandra walked quickly to the studio, noting that it would not be difficult to get Rin, because he was young and would hardly be able to refuse such an offer. Opening the door to the studio abruptly, the woman looked around the room, but now her gaze was more satisfactory. The musicians asked what had happened, if there was something wrong with the soundtrack, or why she had come again. She replied that the recording was fine, and she continued asking where their guitarist was now, since she didn't see him in the room. One of the guys answered that he had gone out somewhere. Changing her tone to a sterner one, Sandra asked why the guy was going out during working hours and not following the rules, and demanded that he give her his phone number. Thorne, slightly nervous, explained that they hadn't exchanged numbers yet, because the guy had just arrived. The woman calmed down a little and said that as soon as Rin returned, he should call her right away. She would wait. The guys from the group noticed that recently this woman had started to go too far and talk to them like slaves, but they couldn't do anything. One of them advised them to just accept it and do work that brings them pleasure, because they are not deprived of money. Meanwhile, Rin came into Julie's office again. She was listening to the recording made by the musicians and noted that his guitar playing was very good. She was sorry that he didn't want to perform. The guy again convincingly answered that there is nothing pathetic in creating and receiving money. The girl continued that their next step is to wait for the singers to choose songs. She also mentioned that one famous singer, Mia, is currently looking for a composer. She added that Mia was a top-notch singer and also very beautiful, asking the guy if he wanted to try his hand. He replied that there was no point in it, because he would have to share more money with her, and he was not interested in that. Julie noted that sometimes she feels like he is a special person, and that there are no other talents like him. but she is sad to realize that he is only interested in money. The young man said that when he earned enough money, she would not see him here again, which left the girl in a stupor. The guy explained that after this he would always lie at home and live a carefree life, and fame is for those who have dreams and ideals. The manager replied that she understood him and believed that he could earn enough money to fulfill his wishes. Returning to his workplace, Rin noticed a colleague who was stretching and getting ready to go to lunch. The girl suggested the guy to go eat with her because it is not so boring in company. He agreed. She noticed that she was very tired from writing the song and asked him what he thought about when he wrote songs. The guy replied that he didn't think about anything except the melody and lyrics of the song, and that was enough. The girl thought to herself that he was talking some nonsense, because it was impossible not to think about something. They started eating, but his colleague reached out to Rin and asked him to look into the hall. There stood Maria. She looked really gorgeous, and everyone around her was staring at her. The guy asked who it was. The colleague repeated the words she had said earlier about a second-level singer and a golden composer. This did not cause any emotions in the young man. He continued eating, and she asked why he did not care and why he did not know her at all. The girl also noted that Rin is really interesting, because others in his situation would bow down to such singers. She went on to say that Maria has popular songs, a lot of cool friends, and is becoming more and more gorgeous. The guy stood up and said he was going to go get another helping of soup. This made the girl a little angry. She wondered to herself why he was acting like some old man. She had many questions, but few answers. As Rin was carrying his portion of food, an obstacle suddenly appeared in front of him. He looked up to see the soup splashing onto the woman's body. The young man felt awkward. He apologized to the beautiful girl and asked if she was okay. The response was an indignant cry about some loser ruining her beautiful clothes and trying to tell her something else. The girl continued to scream that Rin was blind. He needed to open his eyes, and how dare he do such a thing. Hiko, a man of status and a golden composer, joined the conflict. He hugged the girl and asked if she had burned herself. He then turned to the guy and asked what department he was from. The guy ignored the question and said that the girl had stumbled upon him herself. Hiko said that this was not a manly act, and how could anyone say that? Colleagues around him began to discuss the situation. They did not believe that an unknown person would contradict such a status representative, and did not understand how he could not respect the golden composer. Patrick saw the situation and intervened, saying that he had also seen Maria bump into the guy herself. He suggested that they just wash their clothes and end the conflict. Hiko, smirking, said that he was only a senior composer, and it was not up to him to decide what to do. He advised him to leave and continue writing his songs. The girl asked her friend to calm down and said that they would just go wash their clothes. She also apologized to Patrick. However, no one calmed down. Hiko continued to say that Rin was an impudent brat and he could fire him with one phone call. The young man, remaining calm, replied that he did not believe in such possibilities. The golden composer got angry and asked the guy again if he really wanted to be fired. Rin repeated his answer, saying that he could try, but there was no point in wasting his time. Those who observed the situation noted that the guy was really cool, because not everyone could talk so boldly to such a person. Maria asked Rin why he was so confident and what his place was in the company. He replied that he was a recently hired composer. She asked him again if he understood the full significance of their statuses and who he was contradicting. The guy answered that he was right in this situation, and the status had nothing to do with it. The girl said that he didn't understand anything, and that it wouldn't be difficult for the golden composer to fire him. Hiko, taking the phone, added that the boy asked for it himself, and told him not to be offended when he lost his job. It was Henry's call. The conversation started with the words that they hadn't seen each other for a long time and an offer to have dinner together. Then he clarified that he was calling about one thing. The man smiled and said that the idea of dinner was great, and jokingly asked if he was calling to go back to the 16th floor. He added that he could arrange that. Hiko explained the incident that happened and noted that it was some new guy from Henry's floor. He thought that this guy had no place in the company. The boss, already suspecting who they were talking about, asked again if he understood correctly which newcomer the guy was talking about. He noted that it was amazing how the man knew the names of all his employees, and confirmed that he was talking about this particular guy. Henry immediately raised his voice, shouting into the phone and asking if they were all right in the head. He reminded them that he was the director and would not allow some upstart from the 17th floor to interfere with the affairs of his employees. He also added that Hiko is an ordinary author, and if he had a choice to fire Rin or Hiko himself, he would definitely fire him. The young man was stunned. He realized that he had screwed up because he had been scolded because of some newcomer. It immediately occurred to him that the guy was probably someone's close relative. Rin, completely calm, asked Hiko if he wanted to call anyone else. Maria, also confused, tried to smooth things over by pointing out that sometimes people don't know anything about each other. She said she would just go and change. The group returned to the table. The colleague noted that Rin was so handsome and cool, and asked if he was afraid that he had offended such an important person. The guy replied that he didn't care, and he also added that he earns his own food, and no one can interfere with it. Patrick noted that in any case, the Golden Composer is furious about this situation. Rin replied that he had run into him himself, had called the director himself, and had received such an answer himself. After that, he said that it was time for him to go. In the corridor, he met Thorn, who was glad to see him, and said that he had news for the guy. Taking out his phone, Thorn said that the singer's manager wanted to talk to the young man personally and offered to call her now. Contacting Sandra, he said that the same guitarist was now next to him and clarified what she wanted. The woman asked to pass the phone to Rin and clarified whether she understood correctly that it was he who played the guitar for Maria's new song. She then went on to say that they liked him very much and decided to give him a chance. From now on, he would be the singer's only guitarist and would play only for her. In conclusion, she said that Rin could come to her now and sign the contract. The guy replied that he was not interested in such an offer. Almost dropping her cup of hot coffee, Sandra raised her voice and asked if he even understood what was being offered to him. She called him a fool, explaining that such a chance only comes once in a lifetime. She added that if the singer becomes a star, the guy will be on top, and if he refuses, he will later beg her to take him back. The manager also mentioned that if he agreed, he would definitely become a senior composer in the future, something many could only dream of. Rin, tired of the conversation, hung up and handed the phone back, saying that he was not interested in such offers. Thorn smiled and thought to himself that the boy was truly unique. Returning to his floor, Rin met his boss. The man asked if he was too upset by the incident. The boss added that the guy had nothing to worry about and expressed regret that he was not there at that moment, because he would have taught a lesson to all participants in the conflict. He smiled and thanked the man for his support, noting that although the boss can be strict, he always protects his employees. Opening the door to his home, Rin met Frances again. She asked him to give her a few minutes. The guy said he was listening to her attentively. The girl asked if he remembered her friend with whom they had lunch. She then got down to business and offered him the opportunity to become her friend's personal assistant, adding that the working conditions were excellent. The young man replied that he would think about it. The girl began to explain that he did not understand, and that such a proposal should be agreed to immediately, because there might not be another chance. She also clarified that the work was not difficult and decent, and again reminded that her friend was very beautiful. Rin, tired of talking about someone's beauty, interrupted her and asked her to tell him more about her salary. Frances noted that many are willing to work with this star for free, but he is only interested in money. Seeing that the guy was feeling a little awkward, she suggested that he come to her house for dinner if he was really interested in the proposal. A little later, when he cooked the food again, the hostess ate only a little and said she was full. The guy wondered if he had cooked something wrong. The girl stared at him and said that everything was delicious, but she was trying to lose weight, so he didn't need to push her to overeat. Noticing her staring, Rin clarified that she was looking at him for too long, and it made him feel uneasy. The girl replied that looking at him, she thinks that the profession of a food blogger would suit him, because he eats like crazy. She turned on the TV, where a Pilates program was on, and asked him what he would like to eat tomorrow, since she had some free time and could cook something. Replicating poses from the show, she also asked if the guy was free tomorrow. Looking at her, Rin said a little excitedly that he was completely free. The girl noted that this was wonderful, and suggested going shopping together tomorrow. Blushing a little, he happily accepted her offer. The next morning, Frances was already knocking on Rin's door. To her surprise, he opened it right away, and she praised him, calling him a good boy for not oversleeping. The guys sat down to have breakfast. The girl quickly finished her meal again and told the guy not to hurry, because they would have time for everything. In the store, she suggested taking a short walk, having lunch, and then continuing. In the evening, she said she could book a table, or they could have dinner at home. The guy found it difficult to give an answer right away. The girl smiled and noted that it was even for the better. Then the young man's phone rang. It was Yumi. He immediately said that if she didn't have anything serious, he would hang up. Yumi started talking about the contract offer again. The guy replied that he had already refused and asked not to bother him with it anymore. But she didn't stop there and said that if he signed the contract today, his song would be #1 in the charts by tomorrow. She also assured him that it would bring him huge popularity and impressive fees. She then added that they had already thought of a plan to smooth things over, and that it would not affect his reputation. However, the guy only replied that he did not see any benefit in it. At this point, Frances asked if the guy had any business to attend to. If so, she would go home, and he could visit her when he was free. Yumi heard this and nervously asked if it was the landlord with him again and what they were going to do. In response, the girl heard that it did not concern her. Then she screamed and threw her phone. After finishing the conversation, Frances asked him who had called him and if it was the little girlfriend. To this, the guy replied that she was no one else to him. Then the owner said that she became curious about what this girl was doing now. Rin asked not to talk about her anymore, since they were going to go shopping, and suggested that they continue. Hugging his hand, the girl agreed that he was right and noted that she hadn't been to the shops for a long time. A little later, having walked around many different points, the guy walked with bags and thought about when this would end. They went into a men's suit shop, and the girl liked one of them. She asked the young man to look at it. When the guy saw the price, he said it was too expensive. However, the girl insisted and asked to bring a tie and shoes to go with the suit. Having put together the complete look, she told Rin to try everything on, because she was looking forward to it. After putting on the suit, the consultant noted that it fit perfectly, as if it had been tailored especially for the guy. The girl also liked everything very much and offered to buy the suit right away. Although the guy said he didn't need it, Frances said they were taking it, and she would pay. She added that the costume was needed because their plans had changed, and she had completely forgotten about the party they were supposed to go to. In response, the guy said that in that case he could pay for everything himself. However, the girl immediately refused him and asked him not to argue. When they arrived and saw the building, Rin remarked that he felt like there was some kind of trap there. But the girl said that they had already arrived and she would like a snack. While straightening the guy's tie, she clarified that he wouldn't have to pay anything. His job was just to keep her company, and he could eat as much as he wanted. She added that he was her temporary boyfriend for the evening, and immediately thanked him for it. Entering the luxurious hall, the couple was immediately noticed, and the girl was recognized. Behind her back, a request was heard to introduce her companion. Frances greeted everyone, saying she was glad to see them again. She added that it had been a long time since they had last met. One of the guys asked what Rin had that allowed him to get their mistress. The guy calmly replied that he hadn't done anything special. They just felt good together and trusted each other completely. Those present noted that he was interesting and that there was clearly something hidden behind him. The girl looked at the young man and asked with a slight reproach whether he considered it lucky that she had paid attention to him. Those present also started talking about how they envied the guy, because during her school years, Frances was the most desirable girl, and no one could count how many guys tried to win her over. Rin smiled and noted that she had a glorious past. The girl proudly confirmed his words. Here, the attention of the meeting participants was attracted by the sound of the piano keys, and everyone turned to the source of the sound. The boys noticed that the headman was playing the piano again, and wondered if he wasn't ashamed of his previous actions towards Frances. This young man confidently stated that he was performing the melody for his loved one. After finishing playing, he stood up with flowers and began to apologize to the girl for the past, begging her to return everything to how it was. This made the girl angry, and she raised her voice and said that he had no brains at all. At this point, Rin intervened in the conversation and calmly suggested ending the dialogue. The headman, whose name was Chris, was infuriated. He said that even if he was wearing an expensive suit, it would not hide his base soul, and demanded that he not interfere. To this, the guy replied that playing the piano does not make the soul purer. Chris retorted, stating that Frances adores the piano, and he does not even know this fact. Rin asked the girl if she really liked playing the piano and received an affirmative answer. Then he said that in that case he would play his favorite piece for her, which pleasantly surprised the girl. Chris asked him sarcastically if he really thought it was that easy to play the instrument, adding that it wasn't a bicycle. He challenged him to prove his skills. Those present began to discuss that it would be better for the boy not to take risks, since Chris had been playing the piano for more than 10 years, and it would be almost impossible to beat him. Frances thanked Rin and promised to applaud louder than anyone else, no matter how beautiful the melody was. He, in turn, reassured the girl, assuring her that he also knew how to play the piano, and that she should not get upset in advance. While the young man was heading towards the instrument, the headman approached Frances and began to talk again about his feelings and his new lover. To this, he received a request to be silent. When Rin started playing, he filled the entire building with the sound of the melody. An old man heard it and became very interested in who was playing so beautifully. When the performance ended, the audience began to applaud. They noted that although they were not musicians, they were able to feel the beauty of the melody. Francis was also amazed and shouted out loud that the performance was simply magnificent. Chris, for his part, was angry. He said he had never heard the melody before, and claimed it was unfair since Rin had won only because of the piece. The guy answered with a smile that no one could have heard it before, because this melody was heard for the first time, and everyone here became its first listeners. The audience began asking a lot of questions about the guy and his work. Some noticed that the girl hadn't even introduced him to her classmates. Straightening Rin's tie, the girl replied that, although she had not introduced him, he had already proven everything with his talent. However, Chris said that he did not believe that the guy wrote the melody himself. To this, the boy calmly replied that he could think whatever he wanted. Meanwhile, an elderly man approached the meeting place, interested in what he had heard, and asked if he could find out the title of this work. Rin happily replied that he would call it Dream Wedding, which made the old man even more interested. The man added that upon hearing her, he experienced a feeling similar to a dream, mixed with indescribable sadness. He continued to talk about the melody, which surprised the guy greatly. He noted that he did not expect that someone would be able to understand the feelings he wanted to convey so deeply. The elderly man asked again whether he had really written the work himself, and received an affirmative answer. The man then began to talk about talent, noting that it made him happy, and stated that the melody had a chance to gain worldwide popularity. He also asked Rin's name and if he could get his contact information. The guy agreed, but hesitated a bit at the moment of contact. The man, understanding his emotions, offered to give his contacts himself, but he had already started writing his number on a piece of paper. As Rin handed over the sheet of paper, he suggested that the old man would most likely want the sheet music. The man confirmed this, but noted that he would not ask for it directly. The boy began to write down the notes, saying that his grandfather must be a big fan of the piano, and he didn't see anything wrong with it. The young man who accompanied the old man was outraged by the phrase about the amateur. He threw the soda can on the floor and declared that no one dared to talk to his grandfather like that. The man apologized for his grandson's behavior, picked up the can, and as he left, explained to him that he had no idea what piece of music he had just received. Rin and Francis discussed this old man, and came to the conclusion that although they did not know who he was, he looked very prestigious, and sincerely admired the work. The girl once again emphasized that the guy played wonderfully, and promised to reward him when they returned. Walking around the city at night, she confessed that she thought he couldn't play, and was preparing for a disastrous performance. To this, the guy only replied that it was as it was. Looking back at Rin, she noticed that he was probably interested in the whole situation, and offered to tell her everything. Frances began to tell that Chris was the president of her class. He had been courting her for a long time, and being naive, she entered into a relationship with him. She added that it was her first crush, but it all ended when she saw Chris with another girl leaving the hotel. The owner clarified that she knew the girl. She was not very beautiful, but her parents were very rich. The guy was surprised, because Frances herself was from a wealthy family. He asked what she meant. The girl said that during her school years, she hid her family's business. She understood that if the guys knew about the free living space, they would not leave her alone. She continued her story about Chris, saying that after learning about her family, he wanted to come back, hoping that she would give him a house and money to develop his business. Rin said he understood and assumed Chris still hadn't gotten over the rejection. The girl didn't answer, but simply brought her face closer to the guy and looked at him intently. After he asked her what she was up to, Frances hugged Rin tightly and kissed him on the lips. After finishing the kiss, she said that this was her promised reward. However, the guy still could not come to his senses. She then noted that it was late, and she had to go, and quickly ran away. Rin stood there, trying to figure out what all this meant, and wondering what would happen next.